Hello, everyone. Welcome. I hope you are all well and full of energy. It's almost September, and the summer is about to say goodbye to all of us, but it's all years the same. So today we have with us Aleksandr. He is from Turkey, but right now is in Georgia. Welcome, Aleksandr. How is the weather in Georgia?
Hello, hello there, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. It's quite sunny actually today. But it's been some kind of raining lately. But now it's great. So I think that Georgia is beautiful. So yeah.
I have to visit Georgia someday. Well, here in Portugal, where I'm located, is some windy, but we still sun. And today, Alexander will bring us this wonderful topic, Cynefin framework, and how it can help, can be applied in business analyst work. We have audience already, so I think 2 minutes after the hour, we will go and start. Alexander, the stage is yours, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, so hi everyone. Once again. So and welcome to my talk. My name is Alexander Yuseforich. I'm a lead business analyst at Epam. I work in Epam since last year, and now I'm based in Turkey, but currently I'm in Georgia, live from the Tbilisi office. Apart from my regular job, I'm also very, very curious about the so-called complexity theory. It's no surprise that we are living in the complex and highly volatile world. Navigating the growing complexity is one of the key skills regardless of what you do, and especially if you are serving as a mediator between business and tech. In this talk, I would like to discuss so-called Cynefin framework, the powerful tool that equips us with a mental model to not only comprehend the nature of the challenges we face, but also to determine the most appropriate tools to deal with these challenges. So today we will start with discussing what is the Cynefin framework, how to navigate it, and then we will explore how it can be applied in your everyday practice as a business analyst or any other job that you might do. So first, I think it's probably one of the most popular questions. What is a Cynefin framework? Well, the Cynefin framework got its name from the Welsh word Cynefin, which means the habitat or the place of your multiple belongings, reflecting the idea that problems can have multiple perspectives and contexts. The framework was initially proposed by IBM consultants Dave Snowden and Cynthia Kurtz, and now it's widely used by leaders and decision makers to navigate so-called complex problems, like the ones that don't have a single solution. The framework categorizes problems into four domains: simple, complicated, complex, and chaotic. In the next slide, we will explore them deeper. And what's even more important, we will discover which approaches can be used for each problem domain. The core idea of the Cynefin framework is an importance of sense-making and adapting to the complexities of problems by employing the proper tool set and approaches. So before we start, I would ask you to think about how do you approach the problems in your life. When choosing which tool works best for the particular problem, we are most likely to start by assuming if the causality is clear or not. What we mean by causality is that we can relate cause and effect. In other words, if we take a certain action or we give a certain input to the system, we know what the effect will be. So what will be the output of the system? Or given an effect, we can determine what has caused it. So causality works vice versa. This is not always the case, and we need to acknowledge that sometimes there are systems in which we can determine cause and effect, so-called and we call these systems ordered. And there are systems in which we cannot determine the causality. So we call them unordered systems. Now, in an ordered system, they are highly constrained. The behavior is highly predictable, and the causality is either simple and I would even say obvious, or it can be determined by conducting some kind of analysis and breaking it down to the simple connections. If the cause is obvious, then we have a so-called simple system, or how we also call it obvious system. And if it's not obvious, but it can be determined by conducting analysis, we say that this is the complicated system. So now let's have a look at the left side of the graph. For an unordered system, we cannot determine causality. However, we find that some of the systems can be stable, and constraints and behavior may evolve all the time. So causality in the system can only be determined in the hindsight, or after something has happened. They are too complex to be comprehended. They are too complex to be fully understood, and we cannot predict their behavior. So we call the systems complex. But there are also kind of systems which are not stable, and which can only be described as chaotic because of too many constraints and completely unpredictable behavior. So this might sound a little bit complicated, but now we will learn how to deal with it. Okay, so let's have a look and learn how to navigate the framework. So the Cynefin framework is built around 4 domains used for the problem categorization. Applying the Cynefin framework helps teams to gain clarity on the nature of the problem they are trying to solve. So to help them choose the most appropriate approaches for analysis, decision making, and solution development. So let's have a look at this domains and see what tools can be applied depending on the context and depending on the domain in which we're in. So first, a simple domain. In this domain, problems are straightforward, and cause and effect relationship are pretty much clear, right? So the next domain is a complicated domain. So the problems in this domain are more complex, and the cause and effect relationship might not be immediately apparent. However, with our prior experience and with our knowledge and with proper analysis techniques, we can determine solutions for the problems which fall into this domain. Now, the next one, so-called complex domain. This domain is characterized by emerging patterns and unpredictable outcomes. In this realm, the relationship between cause and effect, they exist, but they are too complex, and we can only predict the system behavior, but we cannot fully understand how exactly does this system work. And most of so-called wicked problems fall into this domain. Next, well, chaotic domain. As I said, this is the domain where there is no clear cause and effect relationship, and the situation is highly unstable, right? So, yeah, and we will talk about it later. So, the next important thing here is to understand that each domain has a different approach for tackling its problems. When we are talking the simple domain, it's pretty much straightforward. We sense the problem, we categorize it, or we find the known solution for it, and we apply it. Hence, it's called best practice, right? Because we know which practices may cause the desired desired effect, right? So next, speaking of the complicated domain, we don't have solutions yet, but we can analyze the problem, and we can come up with a mix of best practices. Hence, we are talking about sensing, analyzing, and responding. And the response here is what we call the good practice. Now, moving to the complex domain, things are getting trickier. The relationships here are not clear, and they are too complex to be described. So we can only see how the system responds to our actions. Hence, we are moving from observing to experimenting. By making experiments and trying things out, we sense how the system responds and decide if we are moving in the desired direction or not. Hence, we call this the emergent practice. Now, how do we tackle the chaotic domain? Well, when things when things are in chaos, when things are on fire, it's not the right time to do some kind of experimenting or maybe applying best practices, right? So the main thing we should do here is to act. So do something that puts us into the more manageable domain, and we call this the novel practice. So finally, let's talk about, I would say, the secret fifth domain, which is called disorder or confusion. This domain represents some kind of state of confusion where it's not clear which of other domains can be applied. If you don't know where you are, if you don't know where to start, you are in the confusion domain. So your first task here is to gather information and identify which problem are you dealing with. So now, when you have learned the difference between the domains and which approaches should be taken depending on the domain we're in, let's dive into a couple of practical examples. And let's start with the requirements management. So you can imagine you are the business analyst who are working in the new project. So the first thing you need to do is to find out in which domain are you in. Let's assume that we found ourselves in a project where detailed requirements are clear, desired outcomes are also clear. We know the goals, the goals and all the expectations and the requirement sources. It's pretty much good to be true, I know, but this is what we call the simple domain, right? So, and when business requirements fall into this domain, the focus should be on following established processes, protocols, and guidelines. So traditional analysis techniques such as standard business process modeling or some kind of or maybe use case diagrams can be effective in this context because, well, yeah, you know the business context, so you know how things are connected, right? Okay, now next step here is let's assume that it's a bit more complicated than that. We only know the high-level requirements, and the desired state of the system is not fully clear. So we are in the complicated domain. So requirements analysis here might involve other tools, such as asking some other subject matter experts, or conducting some kind of preliminary research or deeper investigations. Techniques like root cause analysis or a business process improvement methodologies can be helpful here. Now, let's assume things are getting even more complex. The desired state is clear, although a detailed image of it is not clear, it's vague. We don't know what the final solution should be. And this is the typical complex problems. I mean that this is the typical complex domain. So business requirements analysis here might involve some collaborative techniques such as design thinking or applying applying some kind of experimenting the agile techniques and other co-creative and iterative practices that might help us in this context. Because our goal first is to find out in which direction are we moving, right? So now, number 4, if we assume that things are getting even harsher, the strategy is not aligned with other operations, other requirements are not clear, they are contradictory, they are incoherent, the desired outcomes are not clear, and we just don't know where we are and we know that the project is not going to the desired state, right? So the main strategy here in the chaotic domain is to shift into the more manageable domain. So containing the chaos and making good decisions is a way to go here, right? So let's go to the next example: managing stakeholders' relationship. As you have probably already know from the previous slides, how to navigate the framework. The following examples might be much more, well, they might be much more easy for you. So first, let's assume that we have the case where all the stakeholders are perfectly aligned, objectives are clear, communications are just perfect, people understand each other perfectly. All the potential conflicts are mitigated on time, and all the project team speaks the same language. Once again, this might sound like something too perfect to be true. And of course, this falls into the simple domain. And we can follow the best practices here and establish processes, because we don't need to invent something else. We know which causes which effect, right? So when we see that the subject matter experts are partially known or maybe not available, the expectations might be clear but not fully, and stakeholders are only partially aligned, then we have possibly ended up in the complicated domain. We likely won't have the tools suited for this case, right? But we can assume our past experience and adapt it to the situation to handle it. So adapt processes, set up some new procedures, in other words, use good practices. Now, The most common case, I think most of you have probably dealt with, is when the subject matter experts are unknown, expectations might be clear but not specified. For instance, this may apply to some new discovery initiative. You might need to conduct some iterative ideation sessions, try things out until you find the common ground with all the stakeholders, hence the complex environment, right? And finally, the bad place we all have probably been in, when stakeholders are not aligned at all, communications are broken, there are no shared goals or vision, and therefore the project is not going right. So it's not development. It's this is a very bad case. So the chaotic domain. The best thing we can do here is to stop doing whatever we are doing and try to move things into the more manageable domain. So if you see that the communication with the stakeholders in your project are fully broken beyond the point of some kind of recovery. Try to establish the strict communication rules. Try to invest more into the meeting facilitation and so on. So, as you can see, when applying the Cynefin framework, there are three main questions you might need to constantly ask yourself. Where I am? Do I understand the causality of the system? Do I understand how things are actually connected? And what approach should I use to manage the complexity of the problem? Having these three simple questions in mind will definitely help you navigate the framework, categorize the problems better, and find the most appropriate solution. Now, if you want to learn more about the Cynefin framework, I would recommend you following Mr. Dave Snowden on LinkedIn, as well as the Cynefin community online. There are two good books that I might recommend you. One of them is called The Cynefin Weaving Sense-Making into the Fabric of Our World, written by Dave Snowden, Sonia Bilnaut, and other prominent Cynefin practitioners. And also, I would recommend the Cynefin mini book published by the Institute, the well-known tech community. The latter book is super easy and perfectly summarizes the key concepts about the Cynefin framework, and it helped me also in preparing this presentation. So this was it from my side. I'm very grateful to you for you taking your time to listen to it. So I'll be glad to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aleksandr. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. And first of all, we have put the links that Aleksandr have talking about right now in our YouTube page. And we have some questions here. If someone wants to share some more questions with us in the YouTube page or in our Business Analyst community page, please do so. And in the end, Aleksandr will vote in the best question, and the author will receive a badge. So, Aleksandr, let's go here to the first question. The first question that we have here is, in which areas is Cynefin framework used?
Well, that's a good question, because first this was used for the knowledge management, which was done within the IBM company. So for now, this is quite a popular approach among system thinking community, and specifically the community which is working in social transformations and sustainability transformations. So in the domains where we mostly deal with the very complex and highly volatile systems. Yeah.
Thank you. And we have another, I will say that the one that is in the YouTube page right now. Hannah, thank you to your presentation. And the question is how to use Cynefin framework in Scrum. Is it possible?
That's a good question. Actually, yeah, because as I said, that mostly agile techniques are the most properly, they are most suitable for the problems which fall into the complex domain, right? When we don't know the final the final state, right, of our system, of our project, right? So this is the perfect example how we use the iterative and empiristic approach to deal with the problem. So basically, I would say that these two concepts are very they are very much connected. And Scrum, just like any other agile technique, is one of the tools that are most suitable for the systems which fall into the complex domain. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me see more questions in our page. So the next question that we have: Can Cynefin framework be considered a model for decision making?
That's a good question, actually, and I would say that this is probably one of the most common misconceptions about the Cynefin framework. Why? Because well, if we are talking about the model, right, we mean that model is something that can be used to predict the behavior of whatever this model describes. The academic framework is not, well, it's not a model. It's more like the set of approaches that can be used for better navigating the complexity of the system and the problem we are dealing with, right? So it doesn't mean that some kind of system may fully belong to specific domain, and we can only use other tools which are prescribed by the framework, right, for dealing with these problems. No, well, systems they may evolve, they develop, they change, right, and so should our ways. How do we deal with these problems, right? So it's not the model; it's more like the set of some kind of rules, right, and approaches which can be used for managing complexity.
Thank you so much, Aleksandr. Well, right now we don't have any more questions, but first of all, I want to thank you once again for this wonderful presentation and for the material that you bring to us with the links to go further and study. And we received another question.
Right.
Daniel Cardoso put this question. Can you discuss how to identify the typing point where a situation transitions from being simple to either complicated or complex, so that we know when to switch out in the approach?
Yeah, that's the perfect question, I would say, and I would turn to back to the slides, like yeah. Let me just go back here, right? So yeah. Speaking of the tipping point, right? And how do we identify it? Well, I would say that the essential point here is how do we perceive the causality of the system and the problem we are dealing with, right? So in case if we used to deal with a system where we knew that, say, 2 + 2 will always equal 4, right? And after this, and after something has happened, we see that sometimes the result may vary. This might mean that the causality of the system we are working with has become more complicated, right? So that the complexity of the system is getting higher. So we can no longer perceive the causality of the system as simple or as obvious. And if we see that we cannot longer predict the final outcome of the system, then it means that we are probably moving into the complex domain. It means that the number and the quality of connection between the system elements has increased to the point where it's no longer a complicated problem; it's a complex problem. So, answering to your questions, I would say that it's pretty much important to consider how do we perceive the causality of the system.
Thank you. So, if there is no more questions, I will say some final announcements. That is, as usual, a recording will be provided in one day, I think. And don't forget, please, to rate the event and say thank you to Aleksandr in our community page that I sent the link in YouTube page. Aleksandr, thank you so much for your presentation, and see you all briefly.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure to talk about it. Yeah, and should you have any kind of questions, please always feel free to reach out. Yeah, to contact me either in mail or personally. Yeah, thank you all, and have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.